On today's episode, we talk about finance. So we talk about our own money stories, our background, your cultural history that goes into your own personal money story, and also running your own business and the impacts that have. So we think this one is really relative to people who are listening, no matter what your background is, and we think you'll get a lot out of it. So let's get stuck in. Welcome everybody to the latest These Lads Are Mental. How you going, mate?
What's happening, mate? Good morning.
Good morning, 6 a.m. Sydney time. Nice and early. Hence the SAS strip light that's beaming into my face.
Healed by force, this podcast.
Looks like I'm going to get dragged off camera now and put into 2 degree water any second. So I'm fine. I'm fine. Blair Witch Project here in the background.
A brilliant movie. It's time, man. At the time, I remember the whole, is it real? Is it not real? Nobody knew. We knew, but we didn't want to, we wanted to
Yeah.
pretend, didn't we?
That was scary, wasn't it? Jeez, yeah, that frightening that was. What, did you believe in ghosts and demons and all that?
Nah, not really, mate. I wouldn't really say I didn't believe it, I just didn't really think about it.
My theory is I don't really believe in it either, but I don't want to disrespect them because if they are listening to me, I don't want them to go, we'll get them now, and then we'll show them that we are real. If anyone is listening. No, but there's a movie that came out that Sue and I went to watch in the cinema, and the premise is that it gets passed sexually. So someone has sex with you, I think, and that's how you,
I do this ringing a bell.
yeah, so you can pass it on. And when you pass it on, there's a spirit or a thing that's after you, but it only goes at a very slow pace or whatever. But
So,
but then when you're watching the movie, there's like a dot in it, like very in the corner. They're in a school campus or something, and you just see this old granny, and then you're like, is that the fucking spirit or is that just somebody? And then it comes all the way up, and then it'll walk by. It's just a randomer, and you're like, oh Jesus! But then they turn around, the granny's right there. You're like, ah! And then you just keep running basically, and if it catches you, it basically shags you and then passes on the demon because one of the people is like, fuck this, I'm not running, and then it catches and it kills him. And then only you can see it as well, which is even weirder. So everyone else can't see it, but you can see it. And then whatever, the very end of the movie, it looks like they've gotten rid of it. They do the whole, we researched it, we found out what it was, and we blah, blah. And then at the very end, they're like, I can't remember what happens, but they get rid of it. And the movie's about to go, and your man goes around the corner with his missus or something. And then as he goes around the corner, you just see this little dot. And I'm like, oh no, it's gonna get him.
it follows, that's what it's called. I just googled
Follows, yeah, it follows, yeah, that's it. Watch that if you like scary movie. That did freak me out a bit.
it. Shags you.
Yeah, it does. I was really-
Imagine that getting pitched in the director's boardroom. Right, guys, we've got an idea for a film, right? There's this wee dot in the corner, right? What's the name what happens? And then it shacks you.
Actually, and then you pass.
It's just a horror.
Would you take $50 million, but there's a snail after you for the rest of your life? It can't run. It's going to go at snail's pace, but it can get you.
The snail can't run. What sort of hypothetical is this? It doesn't say it can't run, it says that you can't kill it.
Oh, you can't kill it. Oh, okay, yeah.
Kill it, and its only mission is to find you, and it always knows your location.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, always has the case. I couldn't do that. Could you?
I'd be very. There'd be obviously questions getting asked. Like, so could I just fly to a different country for several years? Because something like snails can only go 20 meters every hour or something like that. It's something ridiculous.
So you could
So
do
if
that.
I just flew to USA for a year, I think it was probably about 3/4 of the way here now, or 5 years. Just turn and go somewhere else. I think I'd always be ahead of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so you could use a bit of maths basically and go, I can stay in one place for 3 years before.
I reckon a snail would catch you. I've seen you on the football pitch. I think a snail would catch you. I think a snail would overtake you. What was that? That was that snail.
Fucking this snail's like Usain Bolt. He's an absolute fucking flyer. Here's a question for you. Pseudo related, maybe. Oh, it's to do with my little island of Ireland. There's a big controversy going on there at the moment about Ryan Tubridy. I know you probably never heard of him, but he's, I was going to say he's the Irish version of Graham Norton, but Graham Norton is also Irish, but more so in the TV show that Graham Norton has.
Yeah, good show to be fair.
Yeah, so there's an Irish one of that which has been around for decades as well.
So this guy Ryan, is he the host of this show?
Yeah, he was. It's called The Late Show, and it's the same premises.
So Emma was on.
Yeah, she was on that. Yeah, Emma Dorn. Season 1, episode 16. We made her famous. You heard it here on Glasgow Mental First. She was nothing until she got on the show. Nothing. Yeah, you know, mate. But yeah, it's actually, I think it's gone down the dogs a bit over the years, but it used to be very famous. And they do get big names on it. Like Russell Crowe's on it recently.
Oh, okay.
And it actually predates, like, there's like Alan Chatty Man, and then there's the one with, there's all the American ones and all that kind of stuff.
Jonathan Ross is one as well, didn't he?
Jonathan Ross, yeah, it's the same thing as that, but like I think it predates all of those because it was around. The Gay Byrne was the famous host. He was the original. I think it started but way back in maybe the 60s or the 70s, and it's still going today. But RTE, which is Radio Telefís Éireann, which is the Irish state-owned network, TV network. There's RT1, RT2. It's like the main channel. It's obviously publicly funded, and Ryan Tubridy, he's a bit of a twat anyway. Sorry, Ryan. But he was getting, basically, they're supposed to declare what their earnings are. And I know he's getting €600,000. Like, this happened back about in 2000 when the GFC hit. It came out in the wash, and then this guy Pat Kenny was the host, and he was getting €900,000 for that job, which is madness. It's blown off back there because, one, it's equivalent to the ABC over here, and they're just, his thing came out and he was getting paid €600,000 or something, and then he was also getting side payments that were all gone down on their consultancy fees, and now there's been a big public trial of all the top dogs in RTE. So they've all been on the ticket for years, and it's all coming out now, and it's dodgy as fuck, money going here and all this. And then there's one host here I'm looking at this morning which says he had a car on loan for 5 years, which he wasn't paying for, like this, like all free.
Sounds like a football transfer.
Yeah, but it's mad. Like, he borrowed a car for 5 years and not paid for it. But yeah, what's your take on all that access to
Money.
public
Not people just
tax
money.
taxpayers' money? Like Ireland's, you don't so much feel it here in Australia. It's probably like a bit, maybe more the same in Scotland, where Ireland's the last year or two has been pretty tough, and the cost of living is hard over there. Like, people moan here about, oh, my coffee's gone up, but you still get your coffee. Whereas
I think the UK is probably just as the conversations I'm having with people. I think the cost of living is quite bad in the UK as well. I think it's bad, obviously, all round, but I know a lot of people in the UK who are really, really struggling with it. The cost of living changes.
No, but that's what I mean. Yeah, like, we don't feel that struggle as much, maybe, let's say, over here in Australia. But yeah, a lot of my friends in Ireland, they're all talking about their energy bills, and they're all comparing. That's what goes on in the chat. And then, yeah, like, people are struggling to make ends meet thing at the moment.
And it's, as you said, I think if you're in obviously linking it back to mental health, but if you're in a mental health, you're having a tough time mentally, financially, because obviously I'd probably say finances would be up there. If you said what's the top 3 things that impact people mentally, I would say finance is almost a constant.
Well, I think finance is the number one reason why people get divorced as well. Finance, and
I think, is it not finance? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard someone discuss this recently on a podcast, saying one of the practices is a conversation regarding finances between couples as opposed to the money involved. The two people who love each other, is finance going to be the reason they get divorced? Or we've not got enough money? It's probably going to be the fact that somebody's spending money they should have, or things are happening that haven't been discussed, and then it's just an open conversation regarding finance. I think that would make more sense, because somebody's maybe he's spending all that money or she's spending all that money, like all those sort of nuances. I think that would play more part.
What's your money story?
In what way?
I've watched and read a lot of stuff about this, about your money story. Like, I have a money story from Ireland, which is around scarcity. We were living in a middle class life, but really like more working class. Like, the house nearly went a few times, the mortgage, things like that. Couldn't pay school fees. We used to have a voluntary contribution to my school, but like, we could never afford it. So I used to have to give a letter into the school as the eldest son to do all that. And then when I came to Australia, I didn't think of it of this at the time. Then I came to Australia and I was with Sue. And I feel like Irish people have this big stereotype, but generally I think Irish people have this ingrained in you. You have this money story of penny pinchers, and there's a lot of stuff you can read up on, like money. And if you're warm to it and open to it, money can just come to you. There is that kind of money is abundant, I think, is a phrase that a lot of people say. And if you visualize it and manifest it and stuff.
Don't go to work today, everyone. Just chill at home. Close your eyes.
Here's Gary's money story now. But yeah, and then when I met Sue, like, Sue's like, God, you have a real money story about being worried about the most minutia when it comes down to things. And a friend of mine, a couple who lived in Australia, and full transparency, they're not with each other anymore. They're broken up. But we used to go over to the house sometimes for dinner, and then if you go over on a Friday night, you'd hear them. They'd sit down and they'd have a notebook, and they'd be like, "You bought me a coffee
That's
on,
the fun.
On Thursday." Yeah, but I paid for the insurance, and they do this tally up, and then at the end they go, "You owe me this week $200," and they'd have to transfer.
Friends in it. Well, I'm sure there's multiple ways of managing finances as a couple, but I think that sounds like homework. Sitting doing
Yeah,
math.
isn't it funny? I don't know if it's a thing about UK and Irish people. I don't know that do it versus like I just don't think that happens here in Australia. But I think they are lucky in the way that like probably look, there's different levels of society, of course, but for most part in like the metropolitan areas, like people have inheritance money and the struggle is not as real maybe, so some of those things don't come into play as much. Whereas I was growing up, like things where there were sometimes where you're like worried about like where you're going to have a house over your head, you know, the kind of way, like, or like I couldn't go on school tours sometimes because like, you know, didn't have the money for it. Like, you know, did you have any of that stuff growing up?
Oh, I wasn't living in an affluent area, like definitely working class. I don't think I ever wanted for anything. I mean, like I wasn't going on to Disneyland every year for holiday, and we weren't driving a Range Rover. So this is standard. Like lived in I had an amazing childhood. Didn't want for anything. Got Christmas presents, birthday presents. We went on holiday once a year.
No, I suppose my point there is, yeah, that's great, but there's no right and wrong with what I'm trying to get at here. But I suppose just thinking of my own story, I think probably exposed to some of that stuff does have an impact on you. And then you resent, maybe there's a bit of resentment that builds. And then also that drove my want to be successful and trying to be promoted and stuff like that. So for me, even to come to Australia was about how do I get the next job? How do I fake it till I make it? And I just have to get more money. And then is the next one going to give me a bit more seniority and all that kind of stuff? And I was trying to get away from what I grew up under. Not to say that it was like detrimental or anything like that, but it still had an impact on me in terms of not wanting that. And yeah, when you're exposed to like financial situations where you can't go on a school tour because of this, or I remember like sometimes my mom would get us like, "Oh, I got you those Adidas tracksuits for like your birthday," and I'm like, "Oh, class," and then it would have 4 stripes, like not three, and I'm like, "Mom, these are fake," like they're not fake, they are fake.
Even better, it's got an extra stripe.
Yeah. So it's just those little things chip away at you. Then you go to school, and then if you wore the 4 stripes and you went to school, and then you like
That's true, but
you get bullied, like, or someone go, "Oh, you're a fucking loser," and then so your mom would make you wear them, so you'd wear them, and then you get bullied, and then that goes around again. Then you get annoyed at your mom because she's got me this, and now I'm looking like an idiot. And then it's not to say this is my thing, like being not able to afford to go for some of those things or the house being up like is not that's not a bad, those things do happen, right? And families have to just survive. I suppose the missing link for me and all that was understanding that's okay and that doesn't make anybody wrong or bad, but I didn't have that third perspective to go, look, this, yeah, maybe you can't go on a holiday all the time, but that's okay and you don't need to feel resentful because of it. So that was all like subconsciously going into me. And then I think all that only when I met Sue, obviously, who come from maybe the other end of things, and not so much in terms of being like ridiculously rich or anything like that, but that wasn't a thing for her. And then it started to show up a lot in me. And then I used to penny pinch and was all obsessed about money. And then when we first started going out, she was like, "Oh, we'll get a joint account." I was like, "No, why would I?"
and then under full Adidas tracky, 3 stripes. Fuck off. Which one's going to
I can now afford my Adidas. I'm not going to share it with you. That it was probably a mix of the ego, identity, and then that history of I've worked. This is my money. Like I want
Nah,
to.
I get that. Yeah.
I don't want to give you my money. And like that was a really big thing for me in our relationship in the early days, was actually giving that up and giving that autonomy up in terms of having a shared account. That was like such a big deal for me.
I understand. I definitely can empathise or sympathise with you, especially for couples who maybe have got a massive difference in their pay. So imagine you're earning 150 grand a year and your partner's earning buttons, whatever buttons is, and the other partner's spending most of it. That must happen a lot to a lot of people. ignoring maybe ignore the fact they might have a kid, so just say it's just a couple. That must happen. No child involved. One parent, one partner's out spending, wants to book fancy restaurants, and they're thinking, this is my money. I don't even want that. That's not my money. You bought something new for the house every second week. You're like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
It's all my cash going down this money.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's unusual that you'll both be at the same place in terms of salary at the same time. That's probably highly unusual, but yeah, you have to just overcome it because maybe your partner is doing other things as well, and it's also from their perspective. If you're making more money and you're out spending stuff and they can't do that, it's also like you feel for them sometimes that, oh, I can't afford to go and get that coffee. I have to ask you to give me this. There's that as well, which I totally understand. And at the end of the day, you're in a compromise together. And then, yeah, that's true. That's even doubled when you're in a family or if you've got a kid or whatever. Like, it's even less. That's because your money priorities change even more. And do you and Lexi have a joint account?
Only recently, got married, and then decided a joint account, but we didn't really need one. The bills have been automated for the last 3 years. She buys what she wants to buy. There's no questions. I buy what I have to buy. No questions. As long as the bills are paid, we're saving towards something. Common goal.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be I'd love to do like a survey of like people listening to think what setup do people do. It'd be interesting to see.
I think it's common. Sorry, mate, to interrupt. I think more and more common as it used to be. People get married, joint account, and that's it. But now I'm hearing more and more people of joint account, but people still have their 2 individual accounts. So it's I know a lot of people who will pay their bills from a joint account, and then the bills are separate, and then their accounts are separate for you. Can go and do what you want with that money. I don't have to know. Go and buy clothes, whatever you need to do. Go and enjoy yourself. Not every penny has to be counted for because at the end of the day, like you said, people get things they want to do. They don't want to judge for what they buy or feel resentful every time they buy something. But then at the same time, knowing that's our thing, we agreed to, that's paid for. It's a bit. But mate, it's a big topic. It's a big topic.
It starts when you actually start going into it, and this is why, let's say, people don't necessarily talk about it. But from what we've been talking to there, you can see how deep rooted this is ingrained in people individually, and then never mind as a couple, and then yeah, buying things like it is it's a huge part of our lives, right? Because money is a thing every single day, and if you don't talk about it, it's similar to mental health, really. Like if you don't have a good relationship with money and you don't talk about it, especially with your partner, like it will cause you problems, and it can cause divorces. And the other thing about money is, I don't know where you stand on educational thing, but we don't get taught things in school about like how to budget. I'm terrible at budgeting. Like it's just I'm like no one ever like it would have been a great skill to have at some point in your schooling. Everyone to be taught, here's how you budget. Here's a good percentage to budget off what your salary is.
Buying a house, conversations with a bank. Imagine you have to go through those hypotheticals in school. Today's class, it's a practical thing.
Yeah.
The bank teller. Simple things. You want to go and open a bank account. What's the conversation going to be like? What do you need document wise? Okay, cool. What sort of bank accounts is there? There's a savings account, this percent. What one do you, like, that would be school.
Imagine like learning how mortgages work or the interest rate or the stock market or whatever, like learning how things work and all that kind of stuff would be fantastic. Yeah. Because we don't get any of that stuff. And even emotional health. Imagine learning if somebody is feeling this, what can you do? It's better for you to listen in this scenario. Like all those kind of things would be great things and would help us all. But sure, we haven't got a fucking chance of that with all the fucking institutions that are global, entrenched in thousands of years in schools. There's no way. We can't even all that controversy here in Australia around but going back to the finance thing though, yeah, so you've got all that legacy stuff that you carry with you, which is everyone's is different. I'm a little bit aware of mine, which you can keep an eye on it, but yeah, if you don't get on top of it, or if you don't come to terms with it, that can definitely impact you. And then even regardless of all that, finances on a given day is a huge stressor. And as a business owner, and let's say you as your own operator as well, you're dealing with stress of not only stress with yourself, but stress with your environment in terms of paying staff salaries or getting hit with this and like that. All like I've noticed that big time when I left. When you leave the corporate world, there is a bit of comfiness about it, that you get your salary. Obviously you can be made redundant, you can be fired and stuff, but if you're doing a good job and you're working hard, you can go to bed at night knowing my job's there in the morning. Whereas with a business, You don't really have that safety net. And that is a big thing that, like, there's lots of times I've gone to bed and still do it today where you go to bed going, I don't know how we're going to fucking do this. And that's a horrible feeling. So you can only imagine what that's doing to your mental health in the short run and in the long run. Do you come across that?
Oh, I can massively relate to. Just as you were talking there, I was just thinking about that, of course, business-wise, 100%, mate. Like I only started my business 4 years ago, but a year and a half of that was whilst I was also an employee. It was just a side hustle. But as the first couple of years of having a business is fucking by far the hardest thing I've ever done, by far. And mostly it is due to how hard it is. It's not hard in terms of the work. I love the work. You're helping people, etc. But the finances is a constant battle. Multiple threads to what you said. Like, when I was just thinking, I was like, finance is a big part of my mental health, huge, daily, I think, for everybody. And I was in America in college for 4 years, which you get no money, obviously, in college or university. We all know that. And I went to university at 20 years old, 21 years old. So I finished school, went to be a Sparky in the naval ships for a year and a half, chucked it a year and a half in and went to America on a scholarship, played football, done my university, 4 years, best time of my life, but skint. So I came to Australia at 25, 26, skint. Again, lots of experience, life experience, wouldn't change it for the world, but came to Australia, tried to go on a visa. My first job, mate, right? Again, that S&C coach, football coach, all the rest, that was my background. Try to get popping around everywhere. I lived in Bondi Junction. One guy says, oh, look, there's a place up Sydney Olympic Park. They've got a coaching academy. Initially, I was just doing some work, refereeing at the five-a-side place and a little bit of coaching here or there. But mate, like, buttons I was getting. But when I first got here, I would live in Bondi Junction. I got a job in Sydney Olympic Park coaching, right? And the job, basically, I had to coach at 6:30 in the morning, right? And then my next hours were 6 p.m. at night. To Bondi Junction is a trek. Didn't have a car. So I'd go Bondi Junction to Central Lidcombe sprint train to Olympic Park, walk to the session at 6:30 in the morning. So I'd leave Bondi Junction like 5:15. Do the session. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go back home to Bondi Junction. It was a waste of time. So what I used to do is I would go to Sydney Olympic Park. There was a lot of coaching going on, like good coaching. So I just Google best strength coach, best speed coach, blah, blah, blah. The GWS Giants train where next time we trained. I would just sit and watch sessions, and then I started buying books. And so during those hours, I had no money, so I couldn't go home. I'd just sit and read. I was going to these sessions, just watching these sessions, just to kill time. Obviously, unknowingly, I was subconsciously getting so much information and learning a shit ton of stuff. Then my session would come at 7 o'clock at night, or 6 o'clock at night. Finish that. I'd go home at 10:30 at night, right? And all I was eating in my house, mate, was I had a bag of oats, a tub of peanut butter, tuna, eggs, and bread. That was my diet. Not bad health-wise, but it was the cheapest stuff I could eat. And it was still getting me some sort of calories and some protein and all that. That was my diet for ages. And my wage was 300. I still got the invoice in my folder. I'm keeping this. My first wage was $300. I think at the time my rent was like $260. So I had my train fare to get. So this is my first 6 months, mate. And the guy who gave me the job said to me, he didn't trust, not me, he didn't trust travellers, people who are on visas. So he said, tell you what, you're probably just going to be like someone else. You'll come, you'll coach, and you'll fuck off somewhere else. And I was like, no, mate, I'm genuinely want to stay here. And then he gave me a job after 6 months, sponsored me. But again, the minimum sponsorship was like $50,000 a year, I think, at the time. So that was definitely in my head the whole time of, I need to earn more money here. But when you're on a visa, you can't earn money elsewhere. You're stuck with what they offer you because you can't earn money anywhere else, otherwise it terminates your visa. So I couldn't get the job I was in. I couldn't get. There was no promotion. It was just I was on that. I was on that wage for 3 years, right? And then the guy stopped paying us, not because he didn't want to. He was under his own financial problems. Small business owner, so he stopped paying the staff. And because he'd looked after me, got my visa and all that sort of stuff, I was just mate, it's all right. So not pays for 3 weeks, pays a week's worth. Not pays for 2 weeks, then catch up 2 weeks, then not pays for. Then it was the length of time he stopped paying and started to get extended further and further and further. And again, because he'd been looked after me, he was the guy who sponsored me. I didn't really know a lot of people when I first got here, but he was helpful to me. It was just his family. So I got to know him really well. And then it started getting extended. And at one point, it got to 13 weeks I'd not been paid.
Wow.
Again, but you're on a visa. And the rule on the visa was if you were 2 years on the visa, you can then apply for PR. So at this point, I'd worked a year without the visa because obviously been sponsored, but then the time it took for the visa to come through, and then I was like a year into this thing. So this kept going, and this talking about all the time that I'd spent reading books and listening to podcasts and that. I educated myself on finance. Investing in finance was my two big things for like 2 years solid. That's all I learned about, just non-stop, which was a game changer for me. Because even though I was earning only 50 grand a year, I was investing every single week. I was saving. So after this extended again, it started getting worse and worse and worse. Some of the staff started voicing up about it. A couple of them quit, but I couldn't quit. So I was doing more work, same wage, hypothetically. And then I eventually got to the point where I started having to use a savings. So I'm about a month away, I think, from PR. And I had spent a fair bit of my savings because I had to make up for all the money I'd missed. Plus, I had to then start obviously getting back into what it was. During that period, I tried to commit to my investment thing. So I was taking my savings and saying, I'm still going to put that in this commitment to this investment, no matter what I'm putting in. So that was coming off my savings as well, which was a good habit in hindsight. I'm glad I'd done it. But at the time, it was rough. And then, mate, one day, all the staff just got up and says, can't do this. I'm getting fucking paid. Guy backtracked, went back and forth. Everyone walked up. I was in the office. Everyone got left, apart from me. And I was just sitting on myself. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, you're going to fucking leave as well? And I'm like, nah, mate, I'll stay. And then eventually I said to him, look, mate, I'll tell you what, I'll stay until you replace every single person that's left. So he goes, okay. And he's okay. So I worked, still didn't get paid. He replaced everybody who left. There was like 6 members of staff. And then I interviewed with him the person who's going to take my job. So he then says to me, look, there's a guy in that's going to take your job. But I was like, you know what, I just have to get a new job. And luckily, so a mate of mine said, look, you're looking for a coach. I just need to take it. I need security. So I leave there, right? Everything was fine. He's like, I'll get your money. So I was fucking skint, mate. So skint. Obviously, get this new job. It's financially, my head was up my arse. Mental health wise, my head was up my arse. He calls me 5 days later. Money's going to come. I'm going to pay you 3 weeks, and then I'll pay you in another 3 weeks. And I was like, that's fine, mate. No dramas. He just never phoned me again. So I was contacting me, ghosted me, couldn't get a hold of him. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, man, here we go. Cannot believe I'm getting done here for all this money. Because I was in my head, I was already counting it. I'll replace that money there. My savings had come down drastically. I was like, fucking hell. And you know yourself, if you've got a decent sum saved up, that feeling of losing that, and you think, I need to get back to that amount somehow. But then I had to pay all this money back that I'd been using to pay my wage, my rent, and still was trying to live a sociable life and all that as well. So then I had to restart from scratch, just pretend I don't have that money. For a full year, I had to go through legal with him, legal battles, to go back and forth. He tried to counter-sue me. I got a call through for a mate who was part of the staff at the time, and I wasn't going to take court. He says, look, you can take this to court for free. You can through this Fair Work Ombudsman, they'll give you a lawyer. I'm like, right, sound. So psychologically, again, this was a fucking tough time for me. He's been a lawyer. Me and my mate were going through it at the same time. So eventually when he met us, the lawyer says to me, look, he wants to meet you in that room. And I didn't want to see him again. I'm like, oh no, man. Again, I'm just trying to always relate to mental health. So you imagine I'm in court for the first time in fucking life. Stressed fucking bin, man. Had no idea what to expect. The lawyer wants to talk to that room. So we sit, and I'm not going to go and meet in the room because he's just going to try and stronghold me. I was like, I'll go into the room, but only if you're in there as well. And I'm not talking to him. I'm not even going to look at him. I refuse to look at him. I refuse to talk to him. I'm not going to give him the time of day. So I'm just looking at the lawyer the whole time, and the lawyer's talking to the guy, and he's trying to talk to me. And the lawyer says, oh, obviously we owe this much money, but he had a huge amount of paper on his desk. And the lawyer says, what's this? And he goes, that's toll fines that have not been unpaid tolls that Gary's accumulated as he worked for us. And I look at the tolls and I'm laughing. I'm thinking, so he basically, the E-tag, had the E-tag, I got the E-tag, he was going through it. He didn't give me an E-tag, so I remember going into the office and saying to the secretary, just to let you know, I went through a toll today. It was the first time I'd ever done it. I think I need an E-tag. Yeah, we'll order one. And for a month, nothing came. So I went back in and says, by the way, I still not been given a E-tag. What do I do? She said, all right, we'll sort it. You just go into this website, you put in your rego and we'll pay it. I'm like, all right, no worries. Obviously, notoriously, he was going through bad financial time. So he also wasn't paying his bills. So with the tolls, they double every so often if you're not paying them. So that was accumulating, racking up. So he was trying to counter sue me for my full amount that I wanted off him for these tolls. My lawyer was like, look, he used the van during what period doing all these sessions, all in this van. So far, we went to court about 9 times, and 4 of the times I didn't turn up. And then on the last day, the last time we go again, and the lawyer says, no, look, we need to come to some sort of agreement. He's not budging. He's trying not to pay a single thing here. The toll thing's not going to fly. It's obviously nonsense. So what do you want to do? And I mean, I want my money. You're going to have to compromise somehow. So there's a number. What is the minimum amount that you'll take? So I gave him a number, what I'd take. I want to go a little bit higher than that. I'll go back to him. And if he can negotiate towards your number, it will seem like he thinks he's won at least. And then we back. Eventually got a number. He said, if I can get an agreement to get a number, we'll give you that number, but he has to pay it within 7 days. Would you accept it? I was like, oh, do you know what? I'll take it at this point. Aye. So we got that signature that we get that money. Then we get 7 days pass. We've not been paid. So I remember driving down Gardeners Road on the way, and it was 4:50. This is no joke. 4:54 p.m. on a Friday. It was 7 days after, and my mate phones me. And he's like, "Have you been paid?" I'm like, "No." And both of us just busted laughing, like, "How the fuck's he getting away with this?" And then about a minute later, my mate goes, "Refresh your screen." And the money came in. Paid us 5 minutes before the deadline date. Got that. Never paid the superannuation. Bankrupt his company. Then after that whole shit happened, I went to a new job. Worked there for 4 or 5 years. COVID had obviously hit. All that shit happened again. And then that's when I said, you know what, I need to start my own business here because I've been shafted off my old place. During COVID, obviously, I get let go from my other place because after COVID, there was no work pretty much. So I was unemployed, had to use my side hustle, turn into a business. And then you go back from all that to, you know what, I now don't have a salary. Fuck. I want to provide for my family. I need to get security. And then every time money doesn't happen, I go back to, I was like 8 years ago. Like you said, you think to yourself sometimes, is this going to work? Is this person going to work? What if this doesn't work? I'm back to where I was fucking 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm now in my 30s. What the fuck? You start panicking. And that's constant in your head every single day as a business owner, as anyone with a salary that could be taken away from me at any point.
Wow, that's a story. Yeah, man, that's mental. That's why when you hear things like, just fail, everybody can fail, you're fine, like all that kind of shit. Obviously, there's an element to that, pushing yourself and taking a risk, which is all fine, but it's a lot more real when you're literally trying to pay a staff member or put dinner on the table for yourself. It's a lot. Going through all that court situation that you had, it all becomes a lot more real with that. You often only hear the good news about all that, but maybe not so much in Australia. I remember in Ireland, like, you'd see businesses go up and go down all the time. Like, somebody would open up a news agent in the last 6 months and then it was gone. And then I used to often think, geez, that would have put somebody bankrupt. Like, someone would have put 400 grand into that and now it's gone. I wonder what's happened. I used to often think about that. So it is extremely dangerous when you hear, I don't know, irresponsible maybe is the word, where you hear, obviously you want to encourage people to take a chance to do all that, but it's not as black and white. Yeah, you might hear something anecdotal, but yeah, the reality is not as often as that. And there is, look, thems are the rewards, right? If you do go on your own, the sky is the limit, and you can
100%.
you could probably go way beyond where you ever could go. And like, whenever you work for the man, you are always on the hook for something at some point. No matter how long you've been in a company, you could be gone tomorrow. So there is obviously the rewards, but yeah, I think to sum up all that, it's not to scare people off it, but it's not as easy. I know people don't think it's easy, but it's not as black and white as what people think it is. And yeah, like, it's up and down. And like, for us, anyway, for me, you're always thinking, fucking, when's that moment going to come where you're going to be like,
It's never coming, mate.
oh, fuck, now I'm sorted. Now money is, I've got everything now. And there is an element of, you'll never get that. Even if you do get that, you'll never be content. Because I had that with my psychologist before. He's like, when are you going to be content? You've got a beautiful wife, you've got this, you've got that, you live in Bondi, you've got all these things. What more do you want? And I was like, yeah, no, that does make sense. Because I think at that time I said, oh, I'll be content when I'm 80, sitting on my porch, watching all my grandkids go around. And then he said to me, what, you're going to wait until you're 80 until you're content? What about the rest of your life? And I was like, oh, yeah. When you start putting all that into terms, that did make sense. But then it doesn't make it easy in between all that. That's the kind of the hard part. And sometimes I've often thought, you go through ups and downs with all this. Like one day you're like, fuck it, yeah, go on.
100%. Aye.
I'm a legend. I'll fucking do it. And fuck it, I'm
Aye.
just gonna take a chance. That's what I'm gonna do. Bill Gates, whatever he can do, I can do it. I go through that. You get a day like that. The next day you're like panic mode. Oh, I can't do it. Money.
Aye,
Fuck.
you don't do it. You procrastinate. You don't do it. The day you need to do stuff, you're like,
Yeah.
I've
You've
got
got
nothing to
no
do.
structure because
No
you're not
money
in
today. Aye.
yeah, you're not
Aye.
in a 9 to 5. I'm not in at a desk, which there is something to be said about that. Especially, I think for my psyche and what because I've worked in corporate most of my life until Nimbus, like that kind of worked for me. Just knowing that, like, I had a desk, did this, like that. I
We
needed
spoke
it.
about this with Nick last week, actually, didn't we?
Yeah, that's yeah. Like you need that security, and when that's gone, like it's just up to you. There's nobody else, and there's very other people actually telling you you're doing a good job, Neil, or
Aye.
you're not getting that constant feedback from people. And that is fucking draining on you emotionally.
Targets, mate. You need to set your own targets. You need to set your own targets. You need to set your own priorities. You need to set your own schedule. Then you have to be disciplined enough to do all that. Then on top of that, you've got the other parts of your life. For instance, being disciplined enough to maybe go and exercise, to eat well,
Yeah.
to build your relationships, your family, friend. But fuck, man, it is the
Yeah.
most.
And then you're the only one really, or that can also pat you on the back, which then it's hard to do that to yourself anyway, especially if you're a bit of a narcissist like what I am. Like, where you're like, is this me patting myself on the back because I'm doing good, or is this me patting on the back built off false things, thinking that I'm good at this, but I'm actually not? Like you start going through all of that kind of stuff, and yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard. There's been so many times where I feel like just I fucking wish I just had a stayed.
Oh, mate. One of the big things I thought of this maybe a month ago. And it was a weekend, and I remember always thinking about the whole weekend was the business. That's all I was thinking about. For no particular reason. There was nothing urgent needed to be done. I just couldn't stop thinking about like how many players I need to work with, and how many pays bill and what numbers to get to. And then I thought to myself, imagine I work Monday to Friday, I was getting my salary with the skill set I've got and all these different things. I didn't a bad wage. And then Saturday, Sunday, I would literally just park it, lie on the couch, not give a fuck about anything. Wake
Yeah.
up Monday morning and walk in and somebody go, say to somebody else, what would you like me to do today? I'll do that till 5 o'clock. See you later, buddy. All those things are done.
But that's
That's
what
it.
even it is all relative as you climb up the chain. Because you mentioned that 51,000 threshold. I remember that as well. Even though
That was brutal, man.
my stories, we all have our own little stories, but mine, I remember getting paid that. I thought I was minted when I left Ireland. I was on like I got a good wage with Special Olympics to start off, but my problem was I didn't. A lot of my mates were accountants, and they were all on the 18 grand, 20 grand, 22 grand. I was actually paid probably the most out of my mates, but because the problem with that was like, yeah, you could get promoted, but the trail wasn't that high. Whereas accountant, you just every 2 years you go up and you go. So by the time I was leaving, I was getting caught up. But then when I came to Australia, I was like, yeah, I got 52 grand or something. I was like, fucking hell. Okay. I was like, what'll I do? But I also, like, as you were saying, like, I came here with 4 or 5 years experience thinking I'd walk into a job. And for the first, I brought €5,000 with me coming over here. That's how much I saved, right? Which I thought was like so much money.
That's a decent amount of money. It is really probably about 2000 and what? What time did you come here? 2000.
2011, yeah.
How old are you there? 42. I was 42.
20, I was about 26 as well, yeah. But then, yeah, I was the same as you. After 2 months, I basically nearly blown it all. Just going to the tennis, going out in the session, like all this kind of stuff. And then the rents, and then paying my deposits and all. And then it was gone. And then I had to try and get jobs, and I couldn't get anything, even though I had experience because of the visa. And my first job, I was coaching a private school in Caulfield, in Rippinley, in Melbourne. Caulfield Grammar, and I couldn't believe the money. Like it was good money, and it was the same kind of thing. You do 2 hours a day, but I had no transport. So after a while, you start getting a bag of balls. Like I used to cycle with a bag of footballs on my back across Melbourne. Like
A
uh,
shift.
it was unbelievable. It was like the absolute outrage. And then I also worked in Zamel's jewelry store, which I think has gone bankrupt now, on Swanton Street. I did that for 6 months. It was horrendous. It's like one of the worst jobs I've ever had.
He's doing that as assistant, just sales assistant.
So yeah, imagine standing behind the desk
Uh,
working for a company that like they were just the worst company ever, and like you'd see a gold chain would be like $1,000, and then there was like a staff rate which was heavily discounted, where you knew what you could, it was cost price basically, and it might be like 80 quid. So I'm like,
but for $1,000 gold chain, you get it for 80 quid.
Yeah, you get for 80 quid or something. I was like, how? So you just know you were just
Yeah.
robbing people blind, and then like people come in, and then your boss will be on you going, you're not selling. Because I'd be just chatting to people and being too nice about it, you know. So, oh, you get you this, and like, you know, so I just
And now
wasn't.
you're $80 gold chain on. How you doing, man?
And I was just saying, there was no like staff room, or you just like, you know, you walk around the block and you're like, it was just horrendous to get. And then luckily, just one person who loved Irish people, I got a job, I got sponsored straight off the bat, and then the rest is like history. But then with that first job, that first big job I got, I was like, fuck, you know, I'm doing well here, son. And felt like I did everything I wanted. And by the time I left the corporate world, I was on like double that, more than double that. But then where's that? Was I any happier? Oh, like it wasn't. Yeah. So like there is an element of you just have to be happy with what you've got, because what you've got is probably more than what you give it credit for. And then another thing, I don't know if you think about this as well. It's maybe a bit of positive advice for anyone that does take that challenge. Is sometimes I think, look, if it all went belly up, let's just say, what's the worst thing that could happen, right? We could get made. I could go bankrupt, right? It's probably the worst thing that could happen to you. Lose everything, lose the business, go bankrupt. Luckily in this country, and let's say the same in Ireland, England, like there is a bit of a net there. Like I could just go home to, let's say worst case scenario, got divorced, shambles, and all this kind of stuff. I could just go home to Ireland, live with my mum and dad,
Yeah. Yep.
and I'd
Which
be
is
all.
very fortunate you've got your mum and dad, because some people don't.
Yeah, when I was just explaining, I was like, "Fuck, that's actually a bit of a thin line, because what if they both died, and then I don't know, they owed money to the bank, and there's no money, you'd have nothing." Like,
I know that was a thumbnail.
yeah, that was the fuck.
Fucking hell.
No, that goes through my head. That's what I have.
What's been no, that's a normal. I thought people
I
would
go
probably.
through that something. What if this, and then oh my god, shit. I remember Osher was talking about that end of the world stuff. But I think about the negative a lot. I do think, fuck, if this happens, and then that happens, and then what if this happens? Oh fuck, and then you start going, oh, Jesus, what am I gonna do? And then that's the thing about working 9 to 5. And there is a bit of, not ignorance is bliss, but you know what you were saying, like you can come in on a Sunday hungover and you don't give a shite because you're not carrying that emotional baggage of the company, which is a nice thing, really, like in some shape or form. There's some of the pros about it. That you can do nothing for a whole day and you don't feel guilty about it. I haven't done that in 5 years. She'll say to me, just fucking do nothing. I'm sick at the moment, absolutely dying. I feel like shit. She's all yesterday, because she's up in Brisbane, just go home and put your feet up and just stay in bed all day. I was like, oh, I can't. I got a meeting. Then I got this. I don't have a choice. So it's hard to turn the faucet off, and that's not good for you. Definitely, I don't have a stop button at the moment, which is not good for your health. And you don't want to be dead by 60 or have a heart attack or something like that. But we are lucky in the sense that somewhere like America, you can fall from grace a lot quicker, just less of a safety net. But
There's a few tactics I'd recommend then, just for people having a tool belt. Is one would be like a psychologist said to you, starts naming all the things you've got going for you. And I do this probably periodically. If I'm having a tough time mentally, I'll do it just on the moment. But I've got a book, and once a month, every month, I'll literally write in it where I currently am in my life with everything. Like I'll go through emotional health, physical health, all the rest of it, financial health. See, you say to me, Sully, my business is doing a shit at the moment. But I'm like, mate, you've got a woman you love in your life who loves you. You've got both parents are alive.
does she though?
You've got a beautiful child. You're living in Bondi. You start naming the stuff. You've built a brilliant reputation for yourself. You're running a podcast. Like you start putting all that stuff on a bit of paper. Over time, what I've found is if I look back at, even if 6 years ago, maybe financially I was in a better position or whatever it might have been, I'll look at the things, what I wanted, because I'll always write what I want to accomplish and blah, blah, blah. And I laugh and I think, well, 6 years ago, I had a bit more in handoff to be where I am right now. I remember writing when I was employed, I want to go do my own thing, like fed up of being blah, blah, blah. I want to do one thing. I know I can do it, push myself. And now that I'm in it, and I start going, oh, fuck, I go, oh, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, this is exactly what you wanted, and you're exactly where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I know in 4 years from now, it'll be the exact same process. So I think just literally takes me 3 minutes. I just write down where I currently am, like, well, what I've got, obviously thinking of the positives, what's really good in my life, the main rocks. And at the end of the day, the main rocks are your relationships, your shelter, access to food, water, and then going, okay, career-wise, where am I at? And there's two things people can't take from you. And I was listening to that Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett recently, and he was talking about this, and he was like, he mentioned there's 5 buckets, but 2 of them knowledge and skill set, no matter what happens in any other bucket of your life, no one can ever take them away from you. So if you did, again, hypothetically, Nimbus went down the shitter, the skill set that you've built from all the shit you went through, building that business, and then on top of that, your old job in marketing, no one, if you went back to Ireland, that skill set, that life experience, the knowledge you built of running a business, ups and downs, that would stand you in good stead to get another job. And no one, no matter what happens, no financial situation, no person can remove that from you, because that is what that's why I'd always encourage people to constantly upskill themselves.
The danger we spoke about last couple of episodes about, I've been finding myself now, is like buying things or getting your dinner or food is like giving me like that little like validation, which is like a dangerous place to be in. Like
you pay for that easy, but you think, I think I probably should have done that.
yeah. That's what I get, that immediate regret. I've always had that. That's just something that, like, I love clothes and fashion and stuff like that, but then I buy something and then I immediately go, you shouldn't have bought that, you really shouldn't have bought that. And then that goes through my head, and then you get this guilt, and then you're like, oh. And then even when we were moving all our stuff recently, I was going through all this like crap that we have, and it was like embarrassing. I was thinking like, what do you, like, so much shite that you just you accumulate for no reason. You don't need any of it. Like it's all bad. But yeah, like when I eat, that's feel, at the moment, that's when I feel my most safe and happy, because when I'm eating this thing for the next 20 minutes, I can't think about anything else. So I feel safe and I'm just eating. A nice way to end this chat, which has been about finances and the highs and lows of it, is like definitely writing it down. I think is gratitude. It's all the same thing. Manifesting, which is not something that I would naturally go to, but that does help. Putting it down on paper, even writing it, throwing it in the bin.
Just a reminder. Just a reminder.
You don't. I was on a peer-to-peer network when I used to work at corporate, and they used to do stuff like this. And yeah, exactly what you were saying. Like they used to get you to score yourself out of 10, personally and business wise, every session, and then you'd have to talk about why you gave yourself whatever. So it was really just holding yourself accountable. And then quite often you're like, I'm a 4, and they're like, why are you a 4? And they're like, then you talk it out and you're like, you're not really a 4, you're maybe a 7. yeah. Oh Jesus, mate, you need to get help.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
All right, we're gonna have to cancel this meeting. But no, it was good. And then they used to also say, talking about the imposter syndrome, and they get you to write out like all your achievements. And one of the things I worked with Dara Byrne, who we've had on the show as well, which is around, in terms of your validation or seeking that you've done a good job. If you write that, in one exercise I thought was really cool way to do with him was how many people you've impacted in your life. And this is something you can do in 20 minutes. Just get a sheet of paper and just go, all right, I've been on a soccer team, which has on average 20 people in it, puts a coach, 21. I've been doing that for 20 years. You can just do some maths. Yeah. And then you start building that. I was on the light ball. We had 1,000 people at that. And each one of them is going to tell about 10 people about that. That's 10,000 people you've impacted. You start going through it and you're like, fuck. And it's a good thing maybe if someone's struggling, just do that little exercise and you'll quickly realize how important you are or the role that you have played in society. But yeah, I think maybe just be grateful. There's always a way out, even though it might not seem like that. And I think we both said that sometimes that is tough, and it's not easy. Living with financial stress is the worst stress I think you can.
I think maybe there's obviously other things. I think, but a day-to-day thing, a constant finance must be there for the most constant thing, 100%. And the pressures are ridiculous. Social media, everything's about how do you make more money? How much money do you earn? How do I get more things? That's the pressure.
And probably that won't change, unfortunately. That's the reality that you have to come to terms with. I don't know, let's just say, we sold Nimbus and whatever, 10 million in 5 years' time, and you bought that big house or whatever, and you were sitting there, that'll be great for a while. But then, whether it's the lifestyle you leave or because you have that money, you might invest it somewhere, you put your money in there, that goes down to shit. Like, it's like you can get to those places, but like there's very few, if maybe no one in the world who sits on a mountain of money who really genuinely has no fear at all about losing it. Even those with the most money can often lose the most as well, and there's more risks when you're investing higher stakes. So I think people need to come to terms with, including myself, that day is not going to come. There is no day where you're like,
that's it, man. But maybe even if you get to that point, say hypothetically you sold Nimbus and you get 10 million, brilliant. If for whatever reason happened, you and Sue went together, and Sonny wasn't there, you'd trade that money in a heartbeat to get them back.
Get it all
And that's
back.
that perspective all the time. I always think, well, that's you swap it, anything in the heartbeat, and it just shows you straight away that is nowhere near the most important thing. Again, because the most important thing you do that actually is you've probably got people in your life you'd trade no amount of money for. You'd
Yeah.
happily sit in a park where you need no money and just chat to them for hours.
Yeah, because like when you're on your deathbed, like you're not going to go just as you're about to let go or whatever if you're ever lucky enough.
Fucking minted, mate.
Yeah. Oh, 69 fucking million in the bag. Ooh.
These are all assholes.
Yeah. Then you're like, you probably think, fuck, my little kids and grandkids are going to see all that. And then I've had some people go, never show people you have money and do all this kind of stuff. And you're like, why? Like, you're just going to die one day and then your kids are going to take the money and sell all your properties. And then you're like, even a house, like no one really ever owns a house. You can't because you die. Even if you buy it outright with cash, it doesn't matter. You don't own that forever. You'll be gone. That'll be gone at some point. So there's no point trying to say hold it all in for something that you just have to enjoy the moments. Because I think when you die, like the last thing, your memories, your experiences, I think that's what's going to pop into your head. Hopefully,
there's a book about that. I've actually not read it. I've only seen like the sort of cliff notes of it, but it's stories from people on their deathbed. That's what it's about, but it's not like a depressing book. It's about basically all the regrets, all the things that they say, lessons basically. This is take it like, for instance, take a chance, do that thing that you've always wanted to be doing. Don't worry about other people's opinions, all the common things you hear, but it holds so much more weight when someone's saying it who's about to die, because they are literally saying, I've got one last thing I can say here, but usually it is the things you mentioned about the people in your life are the most important. Spend time in relationships, family, friends, travel, do things you enjoy, help people, give back.
yeah,
That is the best things in the world if you had to write it all down. And then you think of a holiday with your mates or a pub, go to a pub, good example. You could go, if I said to you, do you want to go for a pint, mate? The pub doesn't matter. The pub does not matter at all. We go to the most expensive pub in the whole of Sydney, or we go to a wee shitey, dinky thing where it's $2 a pint, which doesn't exist in Sydney. The $2 a pint, the night would be amazing. I think when nights out and lads' holidays and family holidays you went to, the place didn't matter. It's purely the people you're with. And it's so cheesy to say, but that is the complete awakener or freshener for yourself every single time. When you know what, man, I could be it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll be some laugh. I'll be brilliant.
like there was actually this news story that came in over the night. There was like some lady in China who took her own life, and she voiced Mulan, the character from that Disney thing, and she was a famous actress and all that. And she actually died from being in a coma from her attempt on her life. It's just, I don't know if you heard the story, not to finish on a kind of a different note, but there was a meditator in Bondi in Sydney, Trent from 440 told me about recently. He just passed away, so took his own life. And he spent his whole life teaching others to meditate and help. But Trent said no one had any idea he was struggling to that level. So it's just fucking hell. You just have to.
Mate, so much. It's scary, man. At the end of the day, mate, the podcast is good, but being aware of, trying our best to be aware of other people's situations, it's fucking impossible to know, man. How many stories that you've just told there are like that? How many times have you heard those things? Yeah. Oh, you'd never known he was a happy person, or she was a happy person, and she.
But that guy's meditation is one of the biggest remedies you can do.
Anybody. Yeah. And then, no idea what people are going through. No idea, man.
And that's the thing, like, nobody is safe. It doesn't matter what you do, nobody's safe, which obviously sounds a bit like negative, but then at the same time, he didn't share his story because Trent said he didn't know anything about that. So his struggles. So
if you listen to this podcast, you obviously care about your own mental health, or you care about someone else's mental health.
Yeah.
So the positive there is, regardless, you're going to have people around you who are there to talk to.
Yeah.
And again, I think the tactics and the tools and all that stuff's cool, great for things you can do short term, but there is absolutely no replacement for having a right good conversation. You have a good conversation with somebody, the chances are you'll feel lighter, better, psychologically, a completely different person.
Like, you have to speak about it, no matter what it is, and in the long run, it's better. It's the best thing to do. Not maybe in the moment, or you have to go through a lot of shit and speak to people and let it all out, and that's not easy. Like, I'll say that even from my own experience. Sometimes you go, why do I do this? Blah, blah, blah. But it's the only way you or we or all of us can survive with this, because it can't survive if you don't talk about it. That's just not a solution that's going to work. And it's, as you said, time again, we hear those stories where people don't talk, and then the worst thing can happen. And that's so like that even in itself, it shows you that that process or strategy does not work. You need to talk about it, and it won't get easy straight away, but it will in the long run. So yeah, speak to someone. And then the last thing I was going to say on that as well is it's a responsibility for all of us. There was a guy, Colum, who was the owner of the Doss House, the whiskey bar in the city.
Oh, what bar that is, right?
Yeah, he's a great guy. He sponsored our light bulb when we did that, and he had this brilliant vox pop that he gave at the one of the light balls that we had in Sydney, and he said, "Look, if you don't struggle with mental health and that's not a thing for you, that's great, and I hope that stays like that for the rest of your life. That's brilliant. But we all have a responsibility in this. Maybe it's not you that's the one that's impacted by the mental health, but there's going to be someone in your immediate circle. So it's a responsibility for all of us. Let's say it's Lexi. Lexi's fine, doesn't have any kind of mental health thing, blah, blah, blah. But you struggle with things. She has a responsibility as well as your partner to be able to read your signals and signs when you know, hang on, Gary's isolating here a bit. He's not coming out. He's being a bit short with me. I think something might be going on here. And she could save your life. So we all have a responsibility to be at least aware of the scenario, even if it doesn't impact you. And as Colin said, if it doesn't impact you, that's great. Wish you all the best, and that's brilliant. But you still have a responsibility to keep an eye on those around you in case they do.
100%, mate. Yep, good point. I just wanted to touch on last point to you. Let's do the quick fire questions with you.
No, fuck.
We've done a quick fire question. We'll wrap it up after this. So, are you ready, mate?
Go on.
I don't have my notes in front of me, so I'm going to have to try and remember these tough 3 questions.
After all these episodes.
So, out of 10, where would you rate the world currently on the state of mental health? Or mental health awareness, that's what we usually say. Mental health awareness in the world.
I feel like sometimes we need to break that question up into 2. I would say...
No, but let's not change the format just because you're the host, mate.
I can do it. No, I would say awareness. I'd say awareness. It's about 6, but in terms of where we are, I'd say it's about 2 or 3. I think most countries, most cultures are aware.
Sorry, buddy, I don't want to interject you there, but it's actually just a quick fire.
Oh, sorry.
On the podcast. Just a number, please. Thank you. Where are you currently out of 10 on your own mental health?
This is like the Oscar. When the music comes on, when you start rambling, it's like, get off the stage. Where am I in mental health? Oh, look,
Just a number, please. Thanks, but just a number, please.
I don't know. I'd say 4.
Okay. And last question: if you could recommend just one thing that people could do to improve their mental health each day, what would it be?
Have a jobby.
What, a jobby? Hopefully, people are doing that every day. Not multiple times a day. Fuck,
that's a hard one. Because I'm not going to sit here and go fucking meditate, because I've trained to be meditating. And
you have to say what you actually think. You don't say what you think people should hear. I don't meditate either, mate. I think it's so hard.
I'm going to be real simple with this and generic in a sense, but I think the genericity of this might actually resonate, because I'm sick of people going, do this and fuck off. It's like, it's not that easy. I think just change your environment. And what I mean there is, it can be a million different things. But if you're at your desk or if you're at home and you're like, fuck, I'm in bits here, I'm not feeling well, just change it up. And I don't mean like, it could be as simple as have a shower, go for a walk, grab a coffee, go to the gym, open your laptop, I don't know, whatever that is. But
get out of the house, everyone. Get out of the house. If you work from home, change your environment, get out of the house and do something for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And this could be the most trivial thing you can do. Go buy a chocolate or something like that. Go make a cup of tea. Just, I think that's probably, especially if you're in a real state of thing, because there's no point sitting in it or lolling in it or just fucking hoping it. Like, just change, just do something. And I think sometimes I do that, and then about 2 hours later, you go, oh, I'm not as anxious as I was 2 hours ago. Well, I didn't even do it. I just went for a shower and did that. But
you clean it. I want to clean the living room quickly, and it takes you 10 minutes. You go back, you go, I want to do something else now.
Just go away, do something trivial. Yeah, like fucking, I don't know, take the bins out, and then just doing the bins, that could be a little tick in your brain. Go, well done, Neil. You've done well there. And then you're like, great.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, mate. You go again. Yeah, so just do that. Just change it up. Do something small.
No, that's good. There's a quote: "Environment dictates performance." I obviously use a lot with the players. What it's so true, so true. The environment you're in, people you're around, place you're in, dictates massively how you perform mentally, physically.
Nature versus nurture.
Uh,
Are you doing it, or will do you in the future?
I can do me another one. No point. Don't have two quick fires. Never been done before. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented series. Well, no, thanks everybody for tuning in for this week's episode. It was nice, Gary, just have a little chin ride with you. And an important.
We do have our guest lined up. Today was just a bit of an impromptu because of a late cancellation from a guest.
Yes, yeah, he will remain unnamed. But no, thanks for tuning in, guys. Finance is a big thing. If you've got any questions, send it through. And yeah, Gary and I will catch you next week with one of our lovely guests.
If you need any money, just ask Neil. He's absolutely wadded.
Okay, no, absolutely not. Fucking ATO's knocking on my door here. Well, all right.